Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Guest List podcast with me, your host, Steve Guest. Really excited to have today's guest on the show. For those that haven't listened to any episodes before, the Guest List podcast was born out of the success of my first book, Top Biller, The Life of a Recruiter. And I wanted to create something where I could get to chat to lots of interesting people, but actually add as much value back to the growing list of followers and the growing network around me. And I want to speak to guests that inspire, empower, motivate, challenge the norm, but actually bring lots of variety to all of you that choose to kind of log in and listen. So today's guest is no exception to that. I'm going to run through the bio before we introduce this person. So the lady on today's podcast began her career in teaching, quickly discovered a passion for educational technology, extensive experience managing international projects gained through 7 years working in a range of senior global roles at fast-paced educational technology companies. She's led a range of teams in her role as UK director to entire international teams in the role as global commercial manager. Incredibly successful in her career, paid with a heavy life price. In 2006, whole world collapsed, neglected the things that were really important, relationship, health, family, and lost everything. As today's guest rebuilt herself through therapy, meditation, and lots of personal development books, set herself a new challenge to basically have it all, a high-flying career, and keep a happy life. In the middle of all this chaos, she was headhunted to join the Commonwealth Education Trust as Chief Executive Officer, where she reduced the costs by over 80%, raised funds for the first time, and launched its innovative digital continuous professional development program, Teach 2030, for teachers globally. She created a 5 a.m. morning routine, rock-solid boundaries, and exercise daily for the first time in her life. As a success coach and consultant, she works with ambitious leaders and organisations around the world, teaches how to have it all, a successful career and a happy life. The result, be on fire at work and home. So this morning I'd love to welcome Kat Thorne, founder and CEO of The Morning Game Changer.
Hi Steve.
How are you?
Yeah, good. I've been really excited and looking forward to speaking to you. So thank you so much for having me on today.
So there's a few tongue twisting moments in that bio. Welcome to the show. So
thank you.
First, an opening question. We'll jump straight in. We kind of said this off air. I am a very ambitious person, and I work at 100 miles an hour. Everything in terms of my thought process is about success and wealth and building, I suppose, securities for my wife and family and everyone around me. And I constantly think work, success. My wife, Emma, has to bring me down to earth every so often and say, come on, you've got to live for today. It's not all about living for 15, 20 years time. How do we even start? Where does that balance come from?
Yeah, it's a big area, isn't it? It's a big topic of focus, and I think it comes from when we're younger. I mean, certainly I felt like growing up just with my father, that my dad definitely, he put that into us from a young age, just keep going, see how far you can take your life. And I think what's really important is to remember this one thing, and I say this to quite a lot of people, and especially my clients, that we have to be really careful, because when we focus just on work, we end up giving the worst of ourselves to the people that we love the most. And if you think when you met your wife, how you felt, like when you first meet the love of your life, and all those feelings and all that effort you go into those first dates and that first year, and then a few years down the line, and she gets the really rubbish part of you. She gets the end of the day, the bit when you're grumpy and you're tired. And that's why, having it all is so important, because if we don't invest time in ourselves and the people and the things we love, what's it going to look like in 10 or 20 years time?
you've made some really good points there, and there's a few realizations just in that comment. I'm quite often referred to as the victim elder, which probably says it all. But I think, I mean, my wife and I, we've been together 21 years this year, so we've seen and been through a fair amount, and there's a good balance there. And I think it's the reminders of, I think if it was just me, I would just plow on. I'd be 110 miles an hour, and it would be all about assets, investments, savings, working to the end, targets, KPIs. That's what kind of channels me. And I think having that reminder that actually got family, got two young boys, and having that balance and someone to actually tap you around the back of the head and say, come on, let's go out for dinner, let's go and do this, let's go on holiday, let's have the weekend away. Quite often that can get forgotten, can't it?
Yeah, it can. And that's what happened to me. And as you read in my bio, and in 2016, my entire world crashed. I mean, I lost everything. And I was entirely to blame. I mean, I had created that because I gave 110% all times to my work. And it was so bad that I was taking my work phone to weddings. I was replying to emails in the bathroom at a party on a Saturday night. I was waking up to my phone every morning. And what I have learned, and why I'm so passionate about this, is because I thought that you couldn't have it all. I thought it was either a successful career or a happy life, kind of yoga and green juice and meditation was on the other side. But I didn't think you could have both. And I also didn't think, I felt like you had to sacrifice something. There was no way, because of the hours and the pressure and the stress, there was no way you could have success. And that's what I've learned, and that's what I created for myself, and that's why I set myself that challenge in 2016. And I am the product of my challenge. I mean, I am doing it, and I am now teaching other people how to do it. And look, it's simple, but it's not easy. And I think that's the important thing to remember, that we know how to eat healthier. We know how to manage our time. We most of us know a lot of these things, but it's not easy to create these habits and create these routines and the level of awareness that's important to actually achieve all of it.
There's so many things. I am a incredibly habitual person. I am process, procedure, everything's got its place. I don't like change. So it can be, I know I'm in the office from 7:30 in the morning. And if Emma says, could you just nip to the shop and do this? Or could you just get the kids ready for school? In the back of my head, I'm thinking, no, that doesn't fit with the plan for today because I've got to be in the office. That is me. And I took up golf at the start of the year, obviously with various things that were happening outside of work, with high blood pressure and various hospital trips and things. I knew I needed to make a change for me to perhaps just take the foot off the gas a little bit occasionally.
Yeah.
The trouble with that, and what I found, was when I was playing golf, I was getting up at 7 in the morning to tee off at 7:30. But I was spending 3 hours going around the golf course thinking about what I needed to do when I got in the office.
Yeah.
It's a struggle.
I
know from listening to you, I know if I put the lifestyle bits into my daily routine, it will become habitual. But getting them in there is probably the toughest place to start. What would you suggest for someone like me? Because I would imagine a lot of the listeners to this podcast are in a similar boat. What would you suggest to how to get started, how to implement certain things?
I think right at the very beginning, and this isn't always what people want to hear, because we live in a world where we want instant gratifications. You want to just me to give you my secret formula and you can start doing it tomorrow. But I think where I started and where I start with my clients, both individuals and organizations, is we start with the why. So before we change anything, we look at, what do you really want your life to look like? And I've battled with this whole idea of, there's so many concepts out there that have negative or interesting connotations, like the word vision board. You know, if you had told me, Kat, 5 years ago, Kat, I want you to make a vision board, I just would have, you know, told you where to go, because I think I had written off, because I was such a serious, hungry, ambitious, and still am, by the way, business person. But I didn't have time for meditation. Like, what's that? I didn't have time for airy fairy vision boards. But I was, in some ways, I was so closed-minded to strategies and techniques that could actually make me a better professional. I didn't consider, you know, I only focused on things that I could see in front of me, like sales training or investing in the typical things that you think are going to make you better at your job. It didn't occur to me for a second that actually investing in myself in a personal capacity would have any impact on my work. So the start is really to make a vision, or I also call it an action board for people who also were in my state of mind that think it's too fluffy. And think about, what do you want your life to actually look like? We have to think about what's our purpose, what's our goals. And when you do that, you start to realize there are areas of your life that you're not happy about, whether that's to do with your finances, your business, your relationship, your health. I mean, a lot of my clients are not happy with their health. And it's not that they want to be a particular size, it's just that they notice that they're not, they don't feel good. And energy, you know, is everything. And how, you know, how we spend our time, what we eat, all of those things are very often just automated habits. And so it's, you know, that very first step is creating that board and creating those goals. What goals do you want to set yourself? And then we break those down. And then we look at habits and how you run your day and what needs to change. And I have actually started crafting a very simple 15-minute routine for individuals, and now I'm working with organizations as well, because actually just 15 minutes can make a massive difference. And I think the other thing is that if you are the sort of person, and I read this really scary stat the other day, that 80% of people scroll through social media as soon as they open their eyes. If you're that person that wakes up half an hour before you need to be at work or on your laptop, that is not setting you up for the day. No. And that is the bit that we can change. That's the most powerful thing you can change in your life, is how you start your day.
That's a really good point. I am one of those people that turn open my phone. I haven't even got out of bed and I'm just checking what emails have come through, or what, if there's anything that I need to sort the moment I get in the office. And then you go off and do your bathroom ablutions in the morning, get dressed, go and do everything else, then get to work. And there's so many elements, and it can be really simple stuff, can't it? To actually start changing either your mindset or your setup. Because you can look at your phone, you can see the email you were dreading that was going to come in, or something hasn't happened, somebody hasn't turned up, and you look at it and it's already kind of set your day ahead.
Yes. Yeah.
You haven't even stood up.
No, exactly. And imagine that that's happening day after day after day. And if you're somebody who's, you know, somebody who's working in a really high pressured environment, if you're an executive, a CEO, you know, whatever your role is, and you've got targets to hit, you're kind of layering all of that stuff into yourself before you've even got out of bed. Whereas if you changed those first few things you did, or even just one thing you did in the morning, and you used it to power you up. I mean, now my morning routine, I feel like, and I've been trying to think about how to visually represent this, I feel like I'm wearing a cloak, like a kind of a vest, a bulletproof vest, that's how I would describe it, of energy. Because I've done my exercise and I've done all my activities in the morning, and I'm ready. Like by 7 a.m, I am ready. You could throw anything at me and it's just going to bounce off that vest. Yeah. Because I feel then, and that's why I talk about this concept of being on fire at work and at home. It really is. And that's why I called it the morning game changer, because it really is. It sounds really cheesy to say it, but it is life changing when you change your habits and when you change the way you start your day. And the crazy thing is, we're in control of this, but for most people, it's so automated, they don't even know they're doing it.
It's crazy, you know? And it's not cheesy at all. It really isn't. It's, for me, my eyes are kind of opening wider the more I'm talking to you as well, because a lot of what you're saying is I'm on the opposite end of it, and I'm not doing the good things. I know I need to do them. Quite often when I'm talking to recruiters, or I'm training, mentoring, we talk about how high things are on your priority list. You know, there's value to them. So if I was to say, you need to, I don't know, get those CVs out by the end of the day, but their thought process is somewhere else, and they're thinking I'll get it done in the morning, or they'll come up with, oh, I didn't have time. Generally, that means it's not high enough on their priority list to see the value in getting it done. And I know the value in terms of eating healthy, getting up, starting your day well, eating the right breakfast, exercising, doing the mindfulness things. I know all these things, but I don't generally do them because my priority list or value is get in the office, make some more sales, make some more placements, make sure the revenue's coming in. And I think it's having that mind shift change to get to a point where actually, if you feel healthier, you feel more vibrant, you feel energized, your output's going to be higher anyway.
Yes, exactly. I'm just going to show you something because I have it right here. I've been reading this amazing book called The Happiness Advantage. And actually, I've included this. I'm speaking at a sales revival conference in November. And my whole presentation is how a happy workforce is a game changer for your organization. And Sean Acker, he's now, I think his job title is Chief Happiness Officer, amazing, for Better Up, which is that well-being app in the States that Prince Harry has gone to work for. Anyway, in his studies, he conducted 10 years of studies with around 300,000 people, 200 studies. And he found that happier employees had so many benefits in terms of results, productivity, engagement, and so on. But the most interesting one was on sales. So generally, there was a 20% increase in sales with happy employees. When it came to salespeople, it was 37%. So the irony is that we think we don't have time for these things.
Yeah.
Because we're so focused, and I was exactly the same. So, you know, I'm sitting here as, you know, someone who's been there and done that, got the t-shirt, and we're so focused on work. We've got to get there. We've got to do that. We've got to do that thing, deadline, target, reach the goals that you've got for your family and so on. But what if you made some small changes to how you started your day and indeed how you ran your day that meant you almost doubled your sales? I mean, you could actually work less and achieve more, but we're hardwired to think that's not possible. So we just default to stressing and getting to work as early as possible, working as many hours as possible, because this having it all almost seems too good to be true. So we just reject it.
It feels uncomfortable, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And for me, just the thought of, I don't know, going to the gym in the morning, I would still want to go earlier so I could be in the office at the same time. And it's just the way my brain functions. I've got to be able to change something to get to a point where actually I start to feel really comfortable with it. The main point there is you've got to take some action, haven't you?
Yeah. And actually, if that was a big barrier for you, I would say, well, if you've got to be in the office at 7, then work backwards. You know, could you get up half an hour earlier, an hour earlier? Do you have to go to the gym every day? Could you do a workout in your living room like I do some mornings, 20, 30 minutes hit?
Yeah.
And also the plan for the day. I think this is absolutely key. If you don't plan your day is going to run you, not the other way around. And you know, having that built into your morning routine. I don't ever open my laptop until I'm really clear, what am I going to get out of my day? Because I know as soon as I open my emails, other people are demanding my time, my attention. And I'll get to the end of, and this used to happen to me a lot in my career, I'd get to the end of the week and I'd be like, I haven't actually done anything that I needed to do to get to, you know, to meet my own targets. I've just been helping other people and responding to things and firefighting. And so that just creates more stress which means you have to work later and get up earlier. And then at weekends, even when you're with your wife or your husband or your partner or your friends, you're not really there. Your mind is always somewhere else. But when you're in control and your energy levels are different and your happiness is different, you can actually be present with where you are right now, and you can actually enjoy what is happening around you and not worrying about the money you need to raise in the next 10 years to have the life you want.
That's it, isn't it? It's enjoying the moment. You made a good point now. I'm assuming, have you read The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss?
I have, yeah.
And that was a game changer for me, and it was very much how I wanted my staff in previous employment to work, in that you focus on your day, your agenda, and you shut down the times to have anyone allowed to kind of impact that from emails coming in between perhaps your sales or outbound time. So you could actually focus on getting what you needed to get done during those hours. And putting a value on your own time is just so important. And so few people kind of get that.
Yeah.
I think if you start to really value your time, you actually start to achieve more. And I'm definitely on board with having a plan and having that time management. I'm a very planned out person, which is why I think sometimes I struggle with any sudden change of, can you quickly go and do this? Or can you do, shall we meet for coffee? It doesn't fit often, or I have to plan for it because I need to schedule it in. Okay, I mean, in terms of when we talk about businesses and companies, what role do you feel companies play in terms of the management of their staff and I suppose ensuring that well-being is at the forefront? I say this from a point where perhaps in recruitment we're almost in some elements a forgotten industry, in the fact that we're so far behind. We work in real high pressurized environments where quite often when you're dealing with a client and a candidate, either one can let you down or change their thought process. And the highs and lows of recruitment are so quick and fast and can hit you when you don't expect them, that actually I think it's probably one of the toughest vocations out there. And I think it's only been really probably since the pandemic that recruitment businesses have really started to understand that we need somewhere to go, or we need to be looked after in a way. Sorry, I've kind of rambled a bit on the question there.
No. I think it's an interesting area of discussion at the moment. I think before the pandemic, there was a big focus on well-being of employees, and companies have tried all sorts of initiatives, and good on them for trying to after employees. But I think what the pandemic has done is it's shone a very bright light on what was already a problem, which has now been exacerbated. So people's well-being and mental health was already challenged, pre-COVID. People were already, I think with technology, the lines are blurred now, aren't they? I mean, I don't, when I was working in ed tech, I had a work phone and a personal phone. So I could switch my work phone off, not that I ever did, but I could. But I think, now where we've been working from home, the lines are so blurred, aren't they? And it's, if somebody contacts you on LinkedIn, who's one of your prospects on a Sunday, should you reply or not? Where are the boundaries? And I think before we had a challenge with boundaries, I think it's even more of a problem now. And companies previously have done some interesting things in terms of well-being, gym memberships and, vouchers for this, and even designed automated well-being systems. I actually test drove a car the other day at the Audi garage, and the chap there, he was asking me about what I do, and I told him, and he said, wow, well, we could really do with you in my company, because we eat terrible food. There's always donuts in the kitchen, and all we do is work, and we're answering our emails all the time, where we're under loads of pressure to achieve our targets. But he said they had a well-being system which just didn't sound like it was working. I think a lot of these things have been check boxes, and for me, I'm really, really passionate about, I want to work with organizations who are not interested in ticking a box, but actually interested in creating real results, you know, actually see the transformation of their employees. So increasing in not just productivity or sales, but also happiness, to see that they're, because I believe that happiness breeds success, not the other way around. I think we're chasing success to be happy a lot of the time. And so I think it is companies' responsibility to invest in their staff's well-being. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, but certainly to show them how they can use very simple tools, 15 minutes a day, to protect them from those things that you were talking about, to give them the bulletproof vest. So when they're going on the highs and the lows of all the things that happen during the day, they are not taken on an emotional roller coaster, but it's actually more contained, and they can actually thrive in that environment.
That's so true, isn't it? And I think a lot of things out there can be due to intent as opposed to actually wanting something to be better. And the tick box exercise, I think, is quite apparent in a number of places. But actually, you've mentioned a few stats within this conversation in that the productivity can increase. It can, as I say, increase a huge amount if you get the happiness and the well-being of your staff in the right place. And it comes from the top down, doesn't it? If the company's board of directors and top level people aren't bought into the power of well-being and having happy staff, it's never really going to trickle down to actually become anything, is it?
No, it's so true. And also, one of the things I've been thinking about with working with organizations is, how do you get those people at the top to change their habits? Because ultimately, if they are still just working and they're getting divorced, their relationships are falling apart, they're going to be, they've got poor health, they don't have resilience, how are they, they can't just give this program to their staff and say, you should do this. It needs to be a whole organizational buy-in, I think, that's really going to make the difference, because you don't want your leader performing different things to you, and you're sort of, it would be quite hypocritical. But I think that does happen a lot in organizations, doesn't it? We want the teams to sell more, so we train them in a certain way, and then we do the opposite as the leader. Quite
often, as I say, if I refer back to recruitment, you'd have it where recruitment consultants would go to their manager and say, I really want to bill more next year, I want to be more successful, I want to make more placements, how do I do that? And in my experience, the response is generally, well, you need to work harder, you need to make more calls, you need to do more, and that will in effect increase your results. It's not necessarily been an answer where it's, okay, well, are you healthy? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting up in the morning? Do you have a good morning routine? Are you going to the gym? Are you eating healthy? That's not the conversation that you hear in recruitment or sales, in my experience.
No, I don't think it is anywhere, Steve, because that seems really controversial. And, I've been talking to this great chap, Leon White, who's the organizer of the Sales Revival Conference. And he's been a really successful sales leader his whole life. And we were talking about how, how he used to lead kickoff calls and the types of motivational activities he would do with the team. And if you think about how team meetings generally go, whatever sector, I mean, they generally follow a rule of thumb, like, what's our target? What do we need to be doing? We've got to get X, Y, and Z done. Off you go. It's not right. Come on. What are we, let's get inspired. Let's get our minds in a positive frame of mind. And I was telling him about my old CEO, and he had this brilliant way of hiring people. He would say, just ask yourself one question: would you buy from them? That was his hiring criteria. Now, you're in recruitment, and I'm sure you've got something to say about that, but I learned a lot from that one thing that he said, because it kind of really reminds you that People buy from people. It's all about energy, how, you know, how happy they appear to be, or, you know, their whole aura. And there's no, when I read that stat that 37% higher sales with happier people, I was not surprised at all. In fact, I reckon it could be higher, because why would you want to buy from someone who's not happy?
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't, would you? Because their energy, and it would be possibly uncomfortable and awkward.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, just simple sales tactics on the fact that I'm old school sales on the phone. I walk around. I always have done. Walk up and down the office, walk outside, walk into the meeting room, walk around the table 400 times while I'm talking. I'm clearing the conversation, but it's because you project yourself in a happier, more vibrant way than if I'm sat hunched, leaning over a desk, talking into the table. People are going to buy because you're attentive and you're upright, and they can almost sense the fact that you're positive in the way that you approach things. And whilst that's from an action perspective and not necessarily from a well-being or health perspective, it might be I'm still getting my steps in, but there's a whole persona about how you present yourself to how to build that relationship to get to a point where people want to talk to you or listen to you or take a sale from you.
Yeah. And so I say to people, what makes you happy in the morning? So what was making me unhappy was the feeling that my job was stealing my life. So don't get me wrong, I have always loved my work. I've always been fortunate to work in roles that have challenged me and I've really enjoyed. But I hated that it was stealing my life. And they are literally the only words I can use to describe it, because I was waking up, as soon as my eyes were open, it was work until I went to sleep, and there was nothing else. And that is why I lost everything, because there was no me. There wasn't really any happiness. So what I realized I had to do, especially being headhunted into a CEO role for the first time, is I was like, right, I have to carve out time, because this job is really demanding. It's still going to take a lot of my time, but how do I get time for stuff that gets me inspired and motivates me and will increase my happiness? And, you know, begrudgingly, I started exercising, and I realized that was giving me mental energy. Even though originally I started out doing it for the dream body, that quickly went by the wayside, because I got really into the energy that it was giving me to not just get through the day, but really excel in this really challenging role. And then I started bolting other things onto it, like listening to motivational things rather than reading the news, which was something I often did in the morning, you know, which is kind of powering down. I'd started to power up with watching those motivational videos on YouTube, or reading, you know, listening to an audiobook or whatever. And you get yourself into this frame of mind, going back to that like bulletproof vest idea, where you can take on the world. And I want to help people find that, because I think when you create that, when you get that bulletproof vest, you realize that you can have it all, and all the things that you put on that board originally are all possible now, whereas they may have not seemed possible before.
Yeah, it's so true. I haven't watched the news for years. I'm one of those people. I listen to motivational stuff. I surround myself with people that elevate, not kind of demotivate, or the negative types that will try and drag you down. I want to spend time in the areas that push you to new levels, not drag you down, or you get bombarded with all the bad stuff that's happening. And quite often people will say, oh, have you heard that this has happened? I'm like, no. How do you not know that's happened? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Been in the news for a week. I'm like, sorry, I don't know. And you could say that's me being slightly misinformed, maybe, but I don't have the negative stuff in my head. I just have the positives, or at least mostly positive. So that's really good point. I think any of the listeners here that perhaps watch too much of the news, or always tune in at 6:30 to see the headlines, I'd just start to steer clear. Okay, so over the years, generally we've always come in contact with people that have had influence, or people that have inspired us. Who would you say have perhaps been the people around you that have either pushed you to new limits or seen things in a different light that have changed things? Who do you feel that have been or had the biggest impact on you?
I think in the early stage of my career, it was definitely my dad. We lost my mum when I was 4, so there were 3 of us just growing up with my dad. And back then it could have been in the 80s, it could have been really different, and I think at one point we were close to losing him and possibly go down a fostering or adopting route, but he was strong and we stuck together like glue, our family. And I was met with so many challenges in my life, and he just said, you can do it, and he'd always say, what's the worst that can happen? And I think I've applied that mantra throughout my life. And sort of more recently, I've been working with an amazing coach, Inez, her name is, and she's also, when you learn about people's journeys and you think, wow, where they've come from and the things that you can create from nothing, just by having a positive mindset and trusting yourself and putting yourself out of your comfort zone every single day. But I love listening to people like Tony Robbins and people like that, because I think, again, his story and what he's doing in the world, I know a lot of people might think it's far-fetched or whatever, but I think it's incredible, the success and the influence and the change that you can have on people's lives. Yeah. And I think one of the things I'm really passionate about, especially the area I live in Portsmouth by the sea in the UK. And I see so many disillusioned young people here who have already built up so many self-limiting beliefs, about what they can and can't achieve. And I was fortunate to grow up with a role model who said, you can do anything if you put your mind to it. And so I've believed that my whole life. And don't get me wrong, I still have the, part of my brain that wants to tell me I can't do things, and I just have to override it all the time. But I want to, later on in the business, I'd like to work with young people, because I think that they are, there's so much potential there that's not being, exposed because they believe it's not possible. I want to share something really, I know we don't have much time left, but something that's really key that I think the listeners will enjoy. So on my board, I have and now I'm exposing myself because I'm revealing one of the things on my vision board, but I have a photo of a glass house on the beach. So later on in life, I want to live in a glass house on the beach. I don't know exactly where, but that's the goal. And I was telling someone about this, and there's actually a glass house on the beach near me. And I was saying, that's on my board. And I was telling her all about it. And she said, well, you'll have to win the lottery then, ha ha ha, and I thought for a long time about this, and it sort of pops up in my mind sometimes, and I think, and then I sort of analysed it, and I looked at how many houses there were on this stretch of beach, and there's probably about 40, not all beautiful glass houses, but nevertheless 40 houses or so sitting right on the beach. And I thought, so you're telling me every single one of those have won the lottery and that's why they're living there? No, I don't think so. But it made me realize that she had a self-limiting belief that you can only have that house if you win the lottery. And she was passing that to me unintentionally. And you have to be really careful about your own self-limiting beliefs and others, because they could really shape your future.
Yeah, it's so true. I spent yesterday at the job centre interviewing people that just left school or just left college, and we were looking to take someone on here to help us with our social media. And there's a position here, and there was a girl that I saw. She was the last person I saw. I said, "How do you think you've got on today?" And she said, "Oh, not very well." She said, I don't ever do very well at interviews. And I had to kind of stop and say, if you keep saying I don't do very well at interviews, guess what will happen? You won't do very well at interviews. I said, you've got to start thinking confidently in how am I going to be better at interviews, and start to think in a kind of growth area. The fact that you said the limiting belief of you've got to win the lottery. I say in here, I don't ever want to hear people say, oh, we're never going to be able to afford that. I can't afford that. We're never going to be able to do that. they're the wrong things to say. It should be, how do we do that? How do we get to a position to afford that? What do we need to do or change to get to that position? Ask the right questions, you get the better answers. If you stop yourself now, you won't achieve what you really want to achieve. It's a really good point. And thank you for sharing your vision board. I have a farmhouse on my vision board.
Oh, lovely.
Because I want one of those ones where you can like build little bits and have little outhouses. Whether that's there's a plan in place. Great. We're not quite there yet.
But I think you know what happens to you when you're younger, especially, it shapes you, doesn't it? And losing my mum was such a vibrant person who traveled the world at a really young age, and to me she was taken from us so young, and to me life is such, it's something you get to do, it's not something you have to do. And so, you know, shift your perspective about the things you do. Your body, you only get one body, so you know it's important that you look after it and invest in it if you want it to take you places and experience things. So to me, life is, it's something we get to do, you know, not something we have to do.
It's a really good point. So if there is one single piece of advice that you would leave our listeners today, you may well have just said it, but if there was one single piece of advice, what would you share?
Well, I wasn't going to share that piece, but that's definitely one. I think the other one is just spend your time like it's your money, because you're never going to get time back, and you can make more money, but you know, be really, really conscious of how you spend your time and how it makes you feel. You know, these people who are 80% of people who are scrolling as soon as they wake up, is that the best thing that they could be doing that gets them towards their goals? Probably not. So what are the things they could be doing? So actually being conscious of how you spend your time, and is it powering you up? Is it creating that bulletproof vest for your day?
Kat, my time has been really well spent, because I know from just talking to you in this short space of time, relatively short space of time, I'm taking some lessons away because I need to make some changes. And I am pretty sure 100% of the listeners will be thinking the same. Thank you so much for spending the time with me.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. And I've also been learning a lot from you, Steve. And yeah, thanks again. It was a great experience.
Krista, one last thing. If people are looking to come and find you or reach out and find more about what you do, where's the best place to come and speak to you?
So probably the best place to find me on LinkedIn. So just send me a message on LinkedIn, and I'm really up for having a chat and a coffee. And you know, just finding out where you are and how I might be able to help you. I work with people one-to-one, and I also work with companies. So yeah, that's probably the best place to find me.
Fantastic. An absolute pleasure. Thank you, Kat.
Thanks, Steve.